Hi, everyone. This is Margaret Manning with lifeafterdeath.com. Lifeafterdeath.com is a community of people who are interested in topics related to life after death, the afterlife, near-death experience, and spirituality. We will be talking on these topics with an open heart and an open mind and interviewing wonderful guests who can help us get clarity on different ways of looking and having this conversation. My guest today is Suzanne Giesemann. Suzanne is an amazing person. She's an author, a teacher, and a speaker, but she was a U.S. Navy commander until she had personal situation in her own life that transformed her. She is now a metaphysical teacher and an evidence-based medium. And this means she can talk to people who have died in very practical ways and communicate their stories in specific ways. It's very fascinating. She's the author of 13 books. Messages of Hope is her book about her own personal transformation. And Still Right Here is one that she's just written and is going to tie into the topic, Suzanne, that we're going to talk about loss, and especially loss of a child and how to deal with that grief. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Margaret. I just so love being here.
Thank you. I'm really, really happy to have you because in our community, we have a lot of people who, like you, have dealt with personal loss. And I'd like you to share with us your story because it's such a powerful one, how you went from being a bit of a skeptic about all of this and then got caught up in truth
Yes.
and your own truth and how that relates to your own loss.
Yes, I was in the last aircraft in U.S. airspace on 9/11, and I was up close and personal with so many of the deaths, especially at the Pentagon, my office building that we had just left hours earlier. That started me asking the questions about why are some people in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I set it aside because I wasn't satisfied with the answers that I was receiving. And then I could no longer deny that I needed to ask these questions when my stepdaughter Susan was struck and killed by lightning. She was a sergeant in the Marine Corps. Her father, my husband Ty, is a retired Navy destroyer captain. So she was following that military family tradition and was crossing the flight line when she was just struck by a bolt out of the blue. She was 6 months pregnant at the time with our only grandchild. So this just took the legs out from under us. How do you deal with this? So for about almost a year, I just suffered. I went to a counselor who couldn't help me at all. People can't relate if they haven't gone through that. And nothing helped me like going to a medium and having that medium show us beyond a doubt that Susan was right there in the room with us. This medium didn't know us and described this young woman who died rather suddenly. She had a tingly electrical feeling run up her and was wearing a brown uniform. But the big thing that changed our mind was when she said this young girl is bringing with her a little baby boy she wants to introduce to you. And Susan's child was to be a boy. We already had the ultrasounds showing this. And that completely changed my healing because I went beyond hope to knowing that we're going to see her again. Not only that, she's right here with us. Let's fast forward to me finding out that I can communicate with those who have crossed so clearly that erased all doubt from my mind. I can guarantee your viewers that if they have loved ones who have passed, they are still right here. That's why I named my latest book, second to latest. I just had one come out.
Still Right Here.
But Still Right Here is second to last. And I gave it that title because this is what changes grief to something we can at least tolerate and know that we move forward with our loved ones. We don't leave them behind. They move forward with us as we get used to this new relationship with them.
Now, do you still, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the book is about 4 couples, all of us brought together by our children across the veil, 2 of them board members of a support group called Helping Parents Heal, with chapters international now, that they don't consider themselves bereaved parents. They consider themselves what we call shining light parents. Our children are the shining lights across the veil, and we allow ourselves to grieve because we know they're not gone forever.
Now, since this happened to you through another person, through a medium, and then I know you subsequently now have gone on to realize that you have this power to do the same thing. Do you still speak with your daughter? Do you have conversations with her as a matter of your life now? Is that something?
I don't. I don't communicate with Susan very often, and I know that's because I no longer need to. It's like she's off doing her own thing, just like you would a child would go have their own life. Now, some parents would want to communicate daily, and I know many who do across the veil. But Susan just dropped in on me the other day, and it was absolutely lovely. She comes through in her own voice. I feel her presence. It's magical. But let me tell you, Margaret, I put her to the test in the past. I say, look, I don't want people to say I'm just making this up. You need to tell me something going on in your biological mother's life that I couldn't know about right now. And both times she's come through, one time telling me that her mother's cat was sick. And in fact, her mother had just brought the cat back from the veterinarian. She dropped in on me once. I said, I know this is you, but tell me something about your dad. I don't know. And she said, well, he has a toothache. Ty had a toothache. He hadn't yet told me about it. So for you skeptics, just open your heart and your lives will change.
Well, I'm sitting here listening to you. And of course, I'm like you were probably before this happened. I'm a bit of a skeptic. We're all questioning. That's what this lifeafterdeath.com is all about, where we don't have the answers and we're just curious what goes on in the afterlife. And I was curious when you said she's off doing her thing. Do people do things in the afterlife that, describe tell us what it's like. I know we've talked a little bit about that before, but repeat that.
This is going to depend on the soul's level of learning and growth and what the soul needs to keep progressing, because life, whether here in physical form or afterwards, is all about evolution and growth. So if somebody is still very much connected to the earthly realm, they're going to be dropping in on their family quite often. They're going to be interested in earthly things. If they're a more evolved soul and they don't need to be so connected to this earthly realm, then they will be working on ways to bring more light into the world for all of humanity. It's a whole spectrum.
So do you personally believe yourself, or do you have evidence as a medium that there is reincarnation, that some people decide to come back? What do you think, or that they're not even think to come back, they're forced to come back? There's some reason to return.
I have anecdotal stories. I don't go there that often. I really focus on my specialty, which is showing that our loved ones are here right now.
It's a very interesting topic. There's so many interwoven things. Like one question leads to the next question, the next one. But this about children, I think, is super important, and about how you can find peace and healing. We have, I think I mentioned to you before we started talking, some very tragic stories in our own community of women have shared. So tell us some practical things that you would advise people to do to overcome this grief when you lose someone. So important.
Well, first, to connect with your own loved ones who have passed, especially a child, you must have the belief that they in some form still exist. If you don't believe it, you will not even see the signs that they leave. Then be open to the signs. I have a weekly radio show, Messages of Hope, with unityonlineradio.org. And we bring in people all the time that help us to notice how to see these signs. If you're not aware of the way Spirit communicates with us, the many ways, you may be missing. They don't just talk to us all the time. They blink the lights. They send us many kinds of different signs. But also, it's so important to have that personal experience. And I began sitting in the silence, meditating, practicing presence daily the very week that Susan passed. And that is what has led to my transformation. I've come to know in my heart that we are souls, and that's why we connect with those souls who have passed. And then read everything you can get your hands on about the afterlife. Your heart will tell you if it's nonsense or not. Watch all the videos, just like this beautiful series that you can listen to. And it's been proven that hearing stories of the afterlife, when they speak to our heart, opens us to a greater possibility of having those experiences ourselves.
So your website is Suzanne Giesemann, and I will put this right under your picture because the spelling, I want to make sure people get it right. But on that website, I know you've got a lot of stories. And as you said, you've got your radio show. Tell us one more time about that radio show, because I want people to be sure to know about it.
Well, they can just go to my website, SuzanneGiesemann.com/radio show. And there's a link to all of the archives, a year's worth of weekly shows, and with a description, and just see what speaks to you, what jumps out at you.
Okay, that's really cool. Because that's the kind of thing people need, is practical. Like that happened to someone else. Oh, I'm not alone in this journey. I can relate to it. So tell us a few of the ways that people who have passed communicate with us. Give us a few of just ways, like you mentioned, sound, What else?
Oh, well, messing with electronics. Has the television gone on by itself with no explanation? This is how Susan got our attention, and it happens to people a lot. Believe it or not, feathers. I have this one friend. She's a psychologist. She's not a flake. She's not woo-woo. And she has feathers fall down in a closed room in front of witnesses, other people with PhDs, from her son. I don't know how they do it. I don't question it. That one's a little out there, hard for people to believe. But those in spirit can merge their consciousness with birds and butterflies and small creatures to get them to come and stand in front of us and get our attention. Susan did this the very week after she passed, and it's what changed my path. I asked Susan, please make your presence known to us while we were on a hike. And a butterfly came out from the left and flew around me in a complete circle and bounced into my heart. And then it flew down the trail 50 yards to her dad, flew around Ty in a circle, bounced into his heart, and flew off. Did that give you the goosebumps?
Yes,
yeah,
it did.
It's these things that you can't explain. It's not like, I saw a butterfly. There's timing. I had just asked for a sign. There are things that you can't explain. These are just some examples.
It's interesting you mentioned the butterfly, because my mom died when she was quite young. I was only about 19 years old. But whenever I often see a little moth comes and just sits on the window, and I always think of her when I see that moth. And I don't have a conversation, but I remember a memory comes. It's very lovely.
I love that you said that you always think of her when that happens. Could it be, Margaret, yes it is, that your mother is putting the thoughts in your mind to think of her? My latest book that just came out this week is called Droplets of God, The Life and Philosophy of Mavis Patilla. She's a fabulous medium, been practicing for over 50 years in the UK. She was my original mentor. I'm so honored to tell her biography. But the title, Droplets of God, is in honor of the way those in the spirit world put thoughts in our mind and guide us in their own way. Only they sound like our own thoughts, so we don't give credit where it's due. But this is often how our loved ones get through to us, by putting thoughts, these droplets of God, in our mind.
I love that, turning it around a little bit from my control. I made up the thought to putting it into her control. I think that's wonderful. But, you're right. And I think if people just, you don't have to believe overnight, but like you did, you have to meditate on it and open your heart and your mind to the possibility. And I think when you're in a situation with tragedy, your nerves are more heightened. Don't you think your whole being is more sensitized?
Actually, it's desensitized to the spirit world, and that's why we often miss the signs and aren't aware of our loved one's presence, because our energy is so constricted. And it's by opening ourselves to these beliefs and focusing on love, and the meditation creates space, helps us find the peace that's already within us, that we clear the gunk out of our energetic field and become more aware of this greater reality of which we're already a part.
Well, I think that you've given us some really positive ways to deal with the loss. It doesn't have to be the loss of a child. It can be the loss of anyone that's near and dear to you. But I think the more I'm talking to you here, the sort of the distance between what I thought might be possible and what I think could very well be possible is getting shorter, smaller. So
that's the goal.
I appreciate that. You are changing lives, and that's a wonderful gift that I know your daughter would appreciate.
Well, with my Navy commander background, it was always a sense of duty and a mission. And this absolutely, as you said earlier, this is my mission. And it's I can't think of one that's better to let people know that love never dies. You do it well. Thank you so much, Suzanne. We'll talk again soon, but I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. My pleasure. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our Life After Death YouTube channel and visit our website at lifeafterdeath.com. We are a community of people who are fascinated by the topic of life after death and subjects like near-death experience, the afterlife, reincarnation, and spirituality. Together, we are exploring and discovering these topics together with curiosity and an open heart.